play that again, and you still didn't text me. Your woman said, don't go there. You still didn't text me. You want to talk again? Oh, yes, please.
Where did you say you get these from again? Are they expensive?
No, they'll get you some. They're like $1 or $2.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't think everybody be having no opinion.
I never seen it.
Oh no, I be passing around. Okay, what's on here?
Oh no, I don't got food.
Hold on.
Take you some.
Right?
Good. All right, shalom. Shalom to the remnant. Made it through the day. It's spot. The class we're going to do today is Psalms 22. We're going to get a little understanding of Psalms 22. The reason that we're doing this is because there's some hidden jewels in Psalm 22 many people may not know about. So we're going to start at 22 and 1. Just need someone to read, and I'll read behind you to make sure the message was clear. Psalms chapter 22 and verse 1. Whoever wants to read, whoever got that.
The book of Psalms, chapter 22, verse 1.
Mm-hmm.
My God, why hast thou forsaken me? Why art thou so far from helping me and from the words of my roaring?
So right away we hear David making a cry, my God, or Eli, Eli, why have you forsaken me? And from the words of my roaring. So right now, what David is doing is prophesying. Because when you read down through Psalms 22, we realize this did not happen to David. David did not go through these things. However, the spirit that's in him is causing him to speak these words, right? That's in Matthew 27 and verse 46. I'll read the precepts. So Matthew 27 and verse 46 is the precept to Psalms 22 and 1. Matthew 27 and 46. And about the 9th hour, Yashayah cried with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. That is to say, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? So we see right here what David is speaking. He's speaking in the spirit of Yashayah. What's to take place in the future, right? So the precepts to verse 1 is Matthew 27 and 46. Okay, go ahead, verse 2.
Oh my God, I cry in the daytime, but thou hearest not.
Mm-hmm.
In the night season, and am I not silent?
So he's crying. So he's crying out to his father, but he's saying, you don't hear me, right? So what's happening to him now, right? He has this spirit, but he's also in the flesh. So panic is setting in, right? So now it's being caused pain, and now he's going through what people go through. When something harsh happens or some sort of trauma comes, all of a sudden they feel disconnected and they feel like they're not being heard in their prayers or otherwise. So now he's crying out to his father from the pain that just came from him. Go ahead. To him, rather. Verse 3.
But thou art holy,
Mm-hmm.
O thou that inhabitest the praises of Israel.
So notice, despite what he's going through, he says, you are holy. Right? You that inhabited the praises of Israel. Go ahead.
Our fathers trusted in thee.
Mm-hmm.
They trusted, and thou didst deliver them.
Mm-hmm.
They cried unto thee, and were delivered. They trusted in thee, and were not confounded.
So he's saying, no matter what went on, they cried and trusted in him. Think about how much spiritual strength that took to be suffering, and then to have that realization, our forefathers relied on you. Or forefathers, you didn't confound them. Everything they needed, you gave to them. In the midst of his pain, in the midst of dying, that's his thought process. And this is the same thought process he wants us to have when these things start to occur. So this is what's going on. You're seeing what's going on in his mind. Because I'm sure he's not speaking this out to the crowd. He's saying that within himself. Go ahead. Verse 6.
But I am a worm, and no man, a reproach of men, and despised of the people.
Put a star next to, highlight verse 6. Because we're going to come back to verse 6. Right? So it says, but I am a worm, and no man, a reproach of men, and despised of the people. So now he's saying, in the literal sense, what's happening, I'm insignificant amongst all these people. I'm a reproach of men. No one wants to come near. No one wants to be bothered with me. And I'm despised of the people. That also goes to Isaiah. I'll read that precept. Isaiah chapter 53 and verse 3. I'll read that for you real quick. Isaiah chapter 53 and verse 3. It says, he is despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And we hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. So again, in Isaiah 53 is essentially describing the same thing. How he's treated and how he's seen by people. And how he's even seen by his own people, including the Roman soldiers. So we're going to come back to verse 6. Verse 7.
All they that see me laugh, me to scorn.
Mm-hmm.
They shoot out the lip.
Right.
They shake the head.
Mm-hmm.
Saying, he trusted on the Lord, that he would deliver him. Let him deliver him, seeing he delighted in him.
Mm-hmm.
But thou art he that took me out of the womb.
Mm-hmm.
Thou didst make me hope when I was upon my mother's breast.
So we see from verse 7, now he's being mocked. It says, all that see me laugh me to scorn. They shoot out the lip. They shake the head, saying, he trusted in Yahweh that he would deliver him. Let him deliver him, seeing he delighted in him. So you love this God so much, you pray to him, you think he's with you. Let him deliver you from off that cross, right? So with that precept, we go to We're going to go to Matthew chapter 27 and verse 39. Actually, we'll start a little before that. We'll start from 35 and go to 39. So Matthew 27, verses 35 to 39. And it says, and they crucified him and parted his garments, casting lots that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the prophet. They parted my garments among them. We're going to see this later in there also. And upon my vesture did they cast lots. And sitting down, they watched him there. And they set up over his head an accusation. This is Yashayah, king of the Jews. Then there were two thieves crucified with him, one on the right hand and one on the left. And they passed by, reviled him, wagging their heads, and saying, thou that destroyest the temple, and buildest it in 3 days. Let's keep going. Save thyself. If thou be the Son of God, come down from the cross. Likewise also the chief priests, mocking him, up to 41. With the scribes and elders said, he saved others, himself he cannot save. If he be the king of Israel, let him now come down from the cross, and we will believe him. This is the same thing that's being said in verse 7. They're shaking their head at him, and they're telling him, well, if you love God so much, you're the Son of God, ask him to get you down off that cross. Does anybody know where we heard something like that before? There was something similar that occurred, very similar to that incident. Take a minute to think about that. Well, go ahead.
Was it with the thief that was crucified with him?
Mm-mm. Right. So let's go to. Okay.
Was it when Satan came to him and told him?
Khan. Matthew chapter 4 and verse 6. Right. So Matthew chapter 4 and verse 6. This goes with Psalms 22, 7 and 8. And it says in Matthew 4, let's go to start with 5. Matthew chapter 4 and verse 5. Then the devil taketh him up into the holy city, and setteth him on a pinnacle of the temple, and said unto him, if thou be the Son of God, cast thyself down. For it is written, he shall give his angels charge concerning thee, and in their hands they shall bear thee up, lest at any time thou dash thy foot against a stone. So essentially, you see the spirit of Satan was in the crowd at that time. because they're saying, bring yourself down from the cross if you're the Son of God. Satan almost said the same thing verbatim. Cast yourself down then if you're the Son of God. So he's facing the same situation again, right? So let's go back to verse 9. Psalms chapter 22 and verse 9.
But thou art he that took me out of the womb. Thou didst make me hope when I was upon my mother's breast.
Right.
I was cast upon thee from the womb. Thou art my God from my mother's belly.
Right. So similar to that, we can find in Jeremiah 1 and 5. Right. What he says to Jeremiah in chapter 1 and verse 5 is, before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. And before thou camest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee. And I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations. So the same thing he said to Jeremiah is essentially the same thing that's being said here. He says, but you are he that took me out of the womb. You did make me hope when I was upon my mother's breast. I was cast upon you from the womb. You are my El, or power, from my mother's belly. So he always knew. This is why they talk about in the New Testament predestination. This was beforehand. And for those of you, it's not meant for everybody who read the book of Enoch. They mention Yashayah invoked before creation, that his name was always there, right? Those of you who read it can read it. Those of you who do not, don't, right? So let's go to verse, we read 10 also, right? Let's go to verse 11.
Be not far from me, for trouble is near, for there is none to help.
So a lot of us feel like this at times, depending on what's going on or how much things are overcoming us or how much we're dealing with. We say, be not far from me, for trouble is near, for there is none to help me, because it doesn't seem like anyone can or will help you or wants to help you. So this is his cry to his own father. And we have that same cry to the Abba also when it seems like no one else is going to help us. Go ahead.
Many bulls have come past me. Strong bulls of Bashan have beset me around.
So let's go to get the understanding of the bulls of Bashan. Let's go to Amos chapter 4 and verse 1 is the precept on that. So it's a strong, so again, 11 says, 12. Many bulls have compassed me. Strong bulls of Bashan have beset me round. Right? Read 13. I'm Salakia.
Read 13?
Yeah.
Oh. They gape upon me with their mouths as a ravaging and a roaring lion.
Right. So when they gape, right, when they gape, they have this look as if they're about to attack. They're about to do something. So the mouth drops. And right, and they're taking and breathing. They're about to explode and attack whatever they're looking at. So he says, many bulls have compassed me. Strong bulls of Bashan have set around me. So Amos chapter 4 and verse 1 says this. It says, hear this word, ye kine of Bashan. When you look up the word kine, it comes to cow or bull. Ye kine of Bashan, that are in the mountain of Samaria, which oppress the poor and crush the needy, which say to their masters, bring and let us drink. So we see that these bulls of Bashan are oppressive and they harm the poor. And he mentions that it's a kine. So this is going into the same thing. You are bulls of Bashan, right? This is the treatment that he's about to receive from these bulls, which are people, right? Go ahead, verse 14.
I am poured out like water, and all of my bones are out of joint.
Right.
My heart is like wax. It is melted in the midst of my bowels.
So he's saying, I'm poured out like water. All my bones are out of joint, right? So he's up on the cross, so all his bones are out of joint from sitting up there for so long, right? It says, my bones are out of joint. My heart like wax. It is melted in the midst of my belly. So think about the fear. Like when you have a deep fear, that fear goes from above and sits in your stomach. But the places, it's all your brain, but your brain feels it in your chest where your heart is. And that feeling shoots down. So he's saying it's like melted down to its belly, which is that deep-rooted fear that you feel, or that negative feeling that something is going to happen. Something is not right. He sees it coming, right? So let's go to verse 15.
My strength is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue cleaveth to my jaws. And thou hast brought me into the dust of death.
So what he's saying is my strength is dried up like a potsherd. That's a broken vessel. right? So imagine a vessel that had water or had some sort of fluid in it, and then it's broken, and now it's down on the ground and it's dried out. So it says, my strength is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue cleaves to my jaws, and you have brought me into the dust of death. So this is almost like dehydration. This is a form of dying, right? Because now his tongue is cleaving to the roof of his mouth, and you brought me to the dust of death. So he's giving you an idea of severe dehydration, of dying, of losing fluid, that he's at the border of death, that it's almost, at that point, it's almost like he's taken in dust, right? Let's go to verse, 16?
For dogs have compassed me.
Mm-hmm.
The assembly of the wicked have enclosed me.
Right.
They pierced my hands and my feet.
So notice, we know David's hands and feet were no point pierced by anybody. So he cannot be talking about himself. He has to be talking about somebody else, right? He says, for dogs have compassed me. Notice there's a colon after that, meaning the next line is going to explain it. The wicked, the assembly of the wicked have enclosed me. They pierced my hands and my feet. So if you've seen, like over the years, like in the 80s, there was a bunch of like wild dogs or stray dogs. They get together in a pack and they surround what they're about to kill or what's about to be their prey. So he's saying, again, just like the bulls of Bashan and the ravaging lion, this is the same thing that's happening, but let's get a precept for that. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 56 and 11. Isaiah 56 and 11 says, yea, they are greedy dogs, which can never have enough. And they are shepherds that cannot understand. They all look to their own way, everyone for his gain from his quarter. So now this congregation that are around him are considered greedy dogs, right? And the shepherds, because we know at that time there were scribes and Pharisees that were also around him. They were asking for him to die, right? So all they understand is their own way. They're greedy for gain. So these are greedy dogs. That's one. Let's go to Jeremiah chapter 15 and verse 3. So this gets a little more into what's about to happen. So we see the type of people that are around him, but let's see what that's about. Jeremiah 15 and 3. And I will appoint over them 4 kinds, saith Yahweh, the sword to slay, and the dogs to tear, and the fowls of heaven, and the beasts of the earth to devour and destroy. So the dogs there are there to tear and destroy. Greedy, only understand their own way. So it's like the basis primal instinct is what's happening right now, right? What's going on with them. Right, this is, they pierced my hands and feet, right? If people don't realize what this is saying, you're lost, because it didn't happen to David, and it doesn't make sense any other way, right? Verse 17.
I may tell all my bones. They look and stare upon me.
So he's saying, I may tell all my bones. It's to the point I can see them. So speaking, I may tell all my bones. They look upon me. So I'm so, I don't want to use the word famished. He's probably famished. So I'm so in despair that I can see my bones and they can see me, right? It says, I may tell all my bones. They look and stare upon me. Now I can, my own bones are coming out of my body that they can see me, right? Go ahead.
They part my garments among them and cast lots upon my vesture.
Right.
But be not thou far from me,
Correct.
O Yahweh, O my strength.
Right.
Haste thee to help me.
Right. So if we go to 22, right, verse 18, let's get the precept from Matthew 27 and 34. Almost all the precepts in this are in Matthew 27, and they're in Mark and Luke because it's the crucifixion. So it's almost verbatim description of what was happening to him. So it's Matthew 27 and 34 that we're going to. So Matthew chapter 27 and verse 34. It says, they gave him vinegar to drink and mingled with gall. And when he tasted it thereof, he would not drink. Verse 35. And they crucified him and parted his garments, casting lots that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the prophet. That prophet is David. And we're reading what he's saying. He said, they parted my garments among them, and upon my vesture did they cast lots. And we just read that. No one else has gone through this in the Bible verbatim, but the Mashiach, but Christ, right? You just read verse 19 as well, right? Verse 20.
Deliver my soul from the sword, my darling from the power of the dog.
So now he's asking him. So think about that. He knows what his father's will is. He knows what his mission is. But even then, he's like, if it's possible, deliver me out of this. So think about that. As such a supreme spirit that he has, that he comes into this body and he's overwhelmed by how much power this body has, that he can feel things he never felt before, that he's like, well, take me out of it because of how painful that is. That's how he can, it's cool. That's how he can relate to his people, right? So all the pain that everything that everybody goes through, he can relate to it. That's not a big issue. Don't worry about it. Right? So this is what's happening to him. Think about that. For him to have all that power and all that knowledge, that strike or that pain that they're putting him through pulls him right into that body. And then he's speaking at that point, speaking as a man. Deliver me from this. So this is why it's called the Son of Man, because he understands both sides of the coin. Right? It says, be not far from me, O Yahweh, my strength. Haste to help me. Deliver my soul from the sword, my darling. So because he loves him, my darling, from the power of the dog. We just read about the dogs, right? So now let's read about the sword. Let's go to Revelation 22 and 15. It's not recording anything, right?
I don't know.
What about the sound?
The sound.
Okay, so Revelation chapter 22 and verse 15 says, for without, let's start from 14. It says, blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life. So when you do his commandments and you keep the faith in the Mashiach, you have a right to it, right? And it says, and may enter in through the gates into the city. So this is specific now. You're in the gates of the city. Verse 15, for without, outside of that city, what's up? Oh, okay, not a problem. Yeah.
For me, end it?
You can hear, but you can't see. All right, I keep talking, just leave it.
Okay.
The water. It says, for without, so notice in verse 14, we realize that we are in the city. We're in the garden. You have a right to the tree of life. Verse 15, for without are dogs and sorcerers and whoremongers and murderers and idolaters and whosoever loveth to make a lie. So again, we see the dogs there, right? Let's go to Psalm 17 and 3. The next precept. It's a lot. Hold up. Nope, that's not what I want. Give me 1 sec. Mm, 17 and 13, Salak. Psalms chapter 17 and verse 13. So again, let's read that from Psalms 22. It says, verse 20, it says, deliver my soul from the sword and my darling from the power of the dog. So we read the dogs already. So now this is the sword. Psalm chapter 17 and verse 13. Arise, O Yahweh, disappoint him, cast him down. Deliver my soul from the wicked, which is thy sword. So the wicked is the sword of the Most High when he causes punishment, when death is about to come. He utilizes the enemy as his sword to dole out punishment. So in this sense, he's saying, deliver me from my enemies. Deliver me from the sword. The wicked are the sword in this situation. Deliver me from them. That's what he's asking, right? So go ahead with verse 21.
Save me from the lion's mouth, for thou hast heard me from the horns of the unicorn.
So the unicorns are essentially rhinoceroses because they have single unicorn, right? And also bulls can be considered unicorns. So it's not a mythological horse with wings and a horn and any of that. It's either a unicorn, as in a bull, or a rhinoceros. That's what it is. It has nothing to do with a horse.
Okay.
Or right, a Pegasus. Right? Verse 22.
I will declare thy name unto my brethren.
Mm-hmm.
In the midst of the congregation will I praise thee.
So now he's making a statement. So now, mind you, all of this is happening, and he's saying this to himself. But these are bits and pieces of Yahweh's life also. It says, I will declare your name unto my brethren. In the midst of the assembly will I praise you. So let's go to John chapter 17 and verse 6. John chapter 17 and verse 6 says, I have manifested thy name unto the men which thou gavest me out of the world. Thine they were, and thou gavest them me, and they have kept thy word. We're going to drop to verse 12. And John 17 and 12 says, while I was with them in the world, I kept them in thy name. Those that thou gavest me I have kept, and none of them is lost, but the son of perdition, that the scripture might be fulfilled. So he literally spoke his name amongst the people, right? Just like he says, I will declare your name unto my brethren. I have given them thy name, right? Brethren, in the midst of the assembly will I praise you. Go ahead, verse 23.
Yet that fear Yahweh, praise him. All ye that seed of Jacob, glorify him and fear him. All ye the seed of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
For he have not despised nor abhorred the affliction of the afflicted.
Right? So he doesn't despise anyone that's going through pain, that's feeling something. He doesn't despise or abhor them. Go ahead.
Neither have he hid his face from him.
Mm-hmm.
But when he cried unto him, he heard.
Now, just because you weren't answered doesn't mean he didn't hear you. But it's also his will. He may not want to take you out. He may like, I need you to go through this. Just like his son. His son was meant for that. But the flesh part of him didn't want anything to do with that. Because remember, it's two beings, essentially. Because just like we always say, your flesh is trying to kill you. It's always going against your spirit. So he's like, wait a minute, this is a lot. This was more than I thought it was. Because just like certain things, all right, I'm going to go through this, and then you realize how much pain is involved. You're like, I don't want no parts of this. Because you didn't know what it was, but he has to see it through. He has to push through to the other side because that's his mission. This is why even in the midst of all of this, he praises his father. Right? Where were we? 24? Yep. Okay, verse 25.
My praise shall be on thee in a great congregation.
Mm-hmm.
I will pay my vows before them that fear him.
Right? I'll pay my vows before them that fear him, not before anybody else. Right? Go ahead.
The meek shall eat and be satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
They shall praise Yahweh that seek him. Your heart shall live forever.
So notice, we hear in the scriptures, the meek shall inherit the earth. He says here, the meek shall eat and be satisfied. They shall praise Yahweh that seek him. Your heart shall live forever. So this, again, we see this word keeps coming up numerous times. Meekness, humility. This is who he's granting things to. This is why also he said in Ezekiel, I'm going to purge out the rebels. Those who are not coming humble, you don't show meekness to the people, you're potentially a rebel. Because at what point are you going to do this? When you had the brothers, what was it? When the other brothers were going around speaking in his name, and they didn't want to, they were speaking in his name and said, they're not with us. Why are they speaking in your name? Shouldn't we have lightning or thunder come down or fire come down and consume them? And what did he say to them? You know not what spirit you have. Meekness and humility. It's not always called for to go hard. And this is, mind you, this is why he's there. And he's correcting people just like Peter. Peter was like, I'm not going to let that happen. What? Get back, Satan. He called him Satan. But how did he handle everything? Easy. Even temper. He handled everything properly, right? Verse 27. I think that's what we're up to, right? Oh, let's confirm that. Well, no, we know what it is. That's Matthew 5:5 if you want to know where the meek shall inherit the earth. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, so when Christ said, get back Satan,
Mm-hmm.
At that instant, was it Satan's spirit in Peter? That is what happened?
You know what? I mean, Yahweh saying it, this is my opinion, probably, if he's saying it. But also, it's at the same time, your spirit is wrong. So it's like, get back, Satan.
Yeah, because there's precepts that
If you got it.
It's not every time that the spirit of dwell with man.
What?
It is not all every every time that the Spirit of God dwelleth with man.
Oh, when he said, I will not always keep my spirit with men, like he said at the beginning.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's in Genesis.
That's why I asked the question, because Peter not supposed when he said get back Satan.
Well, you know, just like how we do, we have a tendency to go back to our old man and all the and stuff that we know. It's like, okay, you about to touch him, so I'm gonna get back Satan. And you thinking, wow, well, don't you want me to protect you? But that's your natural instinct. But he's telling you don't do that because you're not realizing you're interfering with his mission. So he's like, so essentially saying only Satan would try to stop what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Even if it looks right, it can be wrong.
Carnal.
Right? Right, carnal. It's a carnal, what's the word? Reaction.
Reaction.
Which is to us normal. Like, you know what I mean? Okay, you're about to kill a person next to me. I'm about to spaz out, and they tell you, get back, Satan. What? But that's what it was. What were we? Verse 27?
Come. All the ends of the world shall remember and turn into Yahweh.
Mm-hmm.
And all the kindreds of the nation shall worship before thee.
Right.
For the kingdom is Yahweh, and he is the governor among the nations.
Mm-hmm.
All that be fat upon the earth shall eat and worship.
Mm-hmm.
All that they go down to the dust shall bow before him, and none can keep alive his own soul.
So notice it says, all they that be fat upon the earth shall eat and worship. All they that go down to the dust shall bow before him, and none can keep alive his own soul. So he's establishing his power that none can keep alive his own soul. But those that are fat on the earth, these people that he's talking about, these are the people that are in power, that have everything they need. They will go and bow before him. And notice it says that go down to the dust shall bow down before him. So let's go to Genesis chapter 3 and verse 14. So in Genesis chapter 3, verse 14, it says, and because the Most High Power said unto the serpent, because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle, and above every beast of the field, and upon thy belly shalt thou go. Dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. So this is essentially dealing with the same spirit in these people, right? It says, all they that go down to the dust shall bow down before him, right? Let's go to Leviticus chapter 11 and verse 42. This one might seem strange, but there's a hidden jewel in that also. Because notice, right? Because these people are unclean in the earth, right? They don't worship the Most High, right? We don't want to be like them. Now let's look at Leviticus chapter 11, verse 42. Notice who their counterparts are. Leviticus 11 and 42. Whatsoever goeth upon the belly, and whatsoever goeth upon all four, and whatsoever hath more feet among all the creeping things that creep upon the earth, them you shall not eat, for they are an abomination. These people are the personification of those animals. They're an abomination because they eat of these things. They eat of the dust of the ground. They crawl on their bellies. The animals he's telling you not to eat, and the people he's telling you not to be around, that he's going to subject to them. There's always a counter to everything he says. There's the literal translation of what he's saying. We don't eat these animals. And then there's the spiritual. It's not necessarily the animals in all cases, but it's the people that behave just like these animals. Same thing with Peter. When he saw the sheep come down, all the animals that killed Peter and eat, it wasn't about animals. It was about unclean people. Same sort of thing. In Leviticus, he's telling you not to eat it. But here, he's telling you what type of people are abominable. And they go crawling on their belly just like these animals. Right? So let's also go to Isaiah chapter 49 and 23. We'll start at 22. Isaiah 49, 22 to 23. It says, thus saith the Most High Power, behold, I will lift up mine hand unto the Gentiles, and set my standard to the people, and they shall bring their sons in their arms, and thy daughters they shall be carried upon their shoulders. And the kings shall be thy nursing fathers, and their queens thy nursing mothers. They shall bow down to thee with their face toward the earth, and lick up the dust of thy feet. And thou shalt know that I am the Most High, for they shall not be ashamed to wait for me. So the same thing is happening here with the wicked, with the people that are fat upon the earth, with have riches. They're going to be your nursing fathers and your mothers. They're going to be the ones taking care of you. And it says, they shall bow down with their face toward the earth and lick up the dust of thy feet. Again, he just said that there. All, Salat, all they that go down to the dust shall bow before him. So it's to him and to his people. Go ahead.
When he cursed the serpent that he shall be on his belly, what is the breaking down of that? Because I always search for which nation is on their belly or what to match with that.
I see where you're going with that one. We'll wait on that one. I'll answer that after, because that's gonna go deep. But that's a good question, because that's actually you going right back to Genesis again and figuring out the serpent thing, right? Because some people, again, that's what's been specified before when it says nachash versus when it says tanin, whether it's an alligator or a snake. And remember, was it a literal snake? Not necessarily so, but this is someone who was high and had pride and saw himself as high, and he's being cursed to go upon his belly. We just read the kings and the nursing mothers and so on are going to go upon their belly, right? But those are people, but they're getting the same treatment that a serpent gets. Yeah. You understand? And the same thing we read Leviticus in 42, they crawl on their belly. So this is how they're seen.